Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, I'm Anissa Fatullah Yuni and also Maulida Putri Permatasari from Group 8 would like to present about assessing speaking. Speaking is an activity of offering meaning and adjusting someone's speech so that the listener can grasp the desired meaning. The way of speaking for each person also varies depending on the age, gender, and dialect of the speaker. Basic types of speaking. According to Brown, some of the basic types of speaking are as follows. First, immediate. Second, intensive. Third, responsive. Fourth, interactive. And the last, extensive or monologue.
So, after knowing the various types of speaking, now we will discuss the various skills that are the objectives of the speaking assessment. Here is micro and macro skills. So micro skills focus on the smaller language components, namely phonemes, morphemes, words, word structure, and phrase units. And then macro skills center on fluency in discourse, function, style, cohesion, nonverbal communication, and strategic choice. Next is designing assessment tasks. So the first is imitative speaking. So initially, many people considered sound imitation to be of no benefit to the teaching of spoken language. However, in recent times, this method is considered capable of improving pronunciation, especially suprasegmentals, in helping students to be able to speak words accurately and easily understood. So the task that can be applied is that the test taker repeats the stimulus, either a pair of words, sentences, or questions. Okay. The first example of designing imitative speaking is word repetition tags. So when the test takers hear repeat after me, beat or beat, bad or fat, so the test taker should repeat the stimulus. Yes. So the scoring scale for repetition tags, if the repetition is acceptable pronunciation, so it should be scored in 2, and 1 is for comprehensible partially correct pronunciation, and then 0 if the repetition is silence, seriously incorrect pronunciation. Okay, the next example of design imitative speaking is phone pass test. So this test supports the validity of repetition of tasks performed not only to test phonological proficiency, but also to test the test taker's overall oral production ability. So here, example of phone pass test specification. In the part A, test takers read aloud several selected sentences. Among the sentences printed on the exam sheet, and then part B, test taker repeat sentences dictated over the phone. Part C, the test taker answers the question with one word or phrase, and then part D, the test taker hears 3 groups of words randomly and connects them to form sentences with the correct word order. And then the last is party. So the test taker have 30 seconds to express their opinion on several topics dictated by telephone. So here there are 5 part of phone pass test specification. So the second example of designing assessment tags of speaking is responsive speaking. So assessment of responsive tags includes brief interactions with the interlocutor. So the first example of designing responsive speaking assessment is question and answer. So in designing questions for test takers, it is very important to know why you are asking the question. Responsive questions may take the following forms. So question eliciting open-ended responses. When the test takers hear, what do you think about the weather today? What do you like about the English language? And so on. Test takers respond with a few sentences at most. So the next example of responsive speaking is giving instructions and direction. This technique is quite simple. Administrators create problems such as reading instruction, such as how to operate a tool or make delicious dishes, and test takers respond. So here, the example of giving instruction and direction. When the test takers hear, describe how to make a typical dish from your country. What is a good recipe for making blah blah blah? How do you access email on a PC computer and so on? Test takers then respond with appropriate instruction or direction. Okay, next example of designing responsive speaking is paraphrasing. So another example of a responsive type of research text is asking the test taker to read or hear a limited number of sentences, 2 to 5 sentences, and then adapt those sentences. So some examples of activity of paraphrasing or paraphrasing a story and paraphrasing a phone message. For example, when the test taker here paraphrase the following little story in your own words. Yes, maybe it talks about vacation in somewhere, and then the test taker should respond with 2 or 3 sentences. Yes, it's about paraphrasing a story. Yes, and then if paraphrasing a phone message is when the test taker hear from a phone message and then test takers respond with 2 or 3 sentences. Okay, the last example of designing responsive speaking assessment is test of spoken English. So the TSE is a 20-minute audio tape tests of oral language ability within a academic or professional environment. The tests on the TSE are designed to elicit oral production in various discourse categories rather than in selected phonological, grammatical, or lexical target. So here, test of spoken English scoring guide is here in the table is the SE rating scale. So it is the score of test of spoken English. So it will be scored as 60 when communication is almost always effective, and if 50 is if communication is generally effective. When the score is 40 is when test taker communicate somewhat effective, but it is less than 550 score, and then it will be scored as 30 if test taker's communication is generally not effective, and then the last score is 20 if the test taker's communication is not effective and it is the least then other score.
The third designing is interactive speaking. The difference between responsive and interactive speaking lies in the length and complexity of the interaction. Speaking of this interaction can be in the form of two forms of traditional language, which are intended as a means of exchanging information, or interpersonal exchange as a means of maintaining social relationships. The first designing interactive speaking is interview. There are two kinds of interview that might be used in the interactive speaking. Those are placement interview and also comprehensive interview, or OPI. Here are the examples of the specification of interview tests for possible questions, probes, and comments. We can look at the examples. There are some questions for warm-up, level check, probe, and wind down. The next is role play. The test taker can use free creativities for the students to produce their output of linguistics. In some versions, there are some rehearsal times are given for the students mapping out their answer. It can help the student to reduce their anxieties. The test taker can give some devices and then gives some controlled imagining questions. The next is discussions and conversations. Discussion may be especially appropriate text through which to elicit and observe such abilities. Like in the slide, there are 8 examples of discussions. The next is games. The games that can be applied for the text takers Here's like city maps. City maps is one of an assessment games that may be applied. The students need to describe the route of city map in front of them to their partner, and that partner should trace the route until reach at the destination. The last is Oral Proficiency Interview, or OPI. OPI is designed to elicit pronunciation, fluency, and integrative ability, sociolinguistic and cultural knowledge, grammar, and vocabulary. Performance is judged by the examiner to be at one of the possible levels on the ACTVL. Design proficiency guidelines for speaking are superior, advanced, intermediate, and novice. The last assignment assessment text is extensive speaking. Extensive speaking texts involve complex, relatively lengthy stretches of discourse. There are frequently variations on monologues, usually with minimal verbal interaction. The first is oral presentation. An oral presentation will be complete with some consideration of speaking text with the rules. First, make a specification about the criterion. Second, set an appropriate text. Third, get a best output. Fourth, decide the practical, reliable scoring and the procedure. For evaluating the text, a checklist or grid is common means for getting the score. The second is picture-code storytelling. The other techniques that may be used to elicit an oral production is through pictures, photographs, diagrams, and charts. For getting a longer story or description, a picture or a series of pictures can be used in intensive text as a stimulus. It is the example of picture-code storytelling text from Brown. Here, the text taker hear or read. Tell the story that this picture describes. The text takers use the pictures as a sequence of clues to tell a story. The next is retelling a story news event. In this test, the students are asked to retell a story or news that they hear or read. A text from listening, stress and emphasis patterns, fluency, and interaction with the hearer are the objectives of this assessment. The last is translation of extended prose. Intensive speaking includes translation of words, phrases, or short sentences. The test taker should read a longer text in the native language and then translate into English. The text can be taken from a story, dialogue, direction, and others. Okay, that's all our presentations today. Thank you very much for your attentions and enjoy this video. Enjoy your learning, and if you have any questions, you can ask in our discussion today. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.